Aloha, everybody. This is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPRN Radio, and this is October 25th, 2019. Well, today we have a very interesting show for you, and for those of you that have listened to my show before, you know I've been doing a lot of shows on our prison systems and immigrants and what's happening to immigrants and how can we help immigrants. And this is kind of another spin on that. I have Robert Vivar coming on from Military Families to speak out, and he's also the Vice President of Veterans for Peace and also the co-director with Unified US Deported Veterans Resource Center. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but have you ever paid attention to what's going on in the news right now? Have you ever asked yourself what's happening to immigrants that actually serve in the United States military? You know, why are they being deported? What happens when they're deported? And why are they deported when they're serving our country? You know, to me, this is a big betrayal that our country is doing to these men and women. And Robert's going to talk about that tonight. So welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Cathy. It's a pleasure to be on your show. We appreciate the opportunity and perhaps to be able to reach more of the public and create more awareness of the injustice that is being occurred and has been going on here for several years of deporting those that were willing to give their life for the freedom, for the protection of the Constitution, the flag, the people of the United States.
Why is this happening?
Well, let's go back a little bit in history. This actually started to really take effect, the deporting of U.S. military veterans, when ex-President Bill Clinton signed the Immigration Reform Act of 1996, which opened up a broader scope of crimes that were deportable. But many people still cannot understand why would somebody that has served in the U.S. military be deported? There's been a lot of myths, a lot of misinformation, even to the point of some people thinking that they were deported because they were undocumented. And how were they able to enlist in the military if they were undocumented? And actually, that is correct. In order for you to serve in the U.S. military, you had to have legal status. The veterans that have been deported all green card holders, legal permanent residents. To enter the military, whether you were drafted back in the Vietnam days or you enlisted, you had to have legal status. You had to have a legal permanent resident card, or lately a work permit, like some of our DACA kids that had a work permit and that enlisted in the military. Of course, we know that with the present administration, that has not been so. So we go back to the actual deportation. What's occurred is that.
Can I ask a question? Because I've always been under the impression, and please correct me, that part of why a legal immigrant wants to go into the service is because they are promised that they will become legal citizens. Am I right or wrong on that?
You're absolutely right. A lot of our veterans that ended up being deported were given a false promise by the recruiters that by enlisting in the military that they would become U.S. citizens. A lot of them were not explained fully that they still had to go through a citizenship application process. A lot of them were just led to believe that the moment they take the oath of enlistment, that automatically made them a U.S. citizen. And that's something that we're going to talk about here a little bit later on as to an argument that we are raising regarding that particular fact.
Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of blown away. And I know with my younger boys and their experiences with recruiters lie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're gonna tell our kids exactly what our kids want to believe. Uh, they're gonna lead them to believe that what they're gonna be getting is what they're looking for. That they're gonna be afforded, an education, travel. They're gonna be even promised certain particular jobs that the kids are looking for, and it's not true. And a very good example right now is my grandson. I was just given the news last night that he enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. Uh, I knew that he was being courted by the Marine Corps by a recruiter here a few months ago, and we immediately communicated with him uh, our disagreement with it, not of him serving, but the reason for his serving and what that was going to mean to him and the false promises that he was being given. You know, uh, he's only 19 years old. For the last couple of years, he's been a highway patrol explorer, uh, a really overachiever. He's a great kid, great personality. Uh, he's an all-around great kid, and he even won an award that afforded him a scholarship to the highway patrol in California. Yeah. So once he turns 21, he has a very promise as a California highway. Well, somewhere along the line, and also another highway patrol officer uh, brainwashed him to believe that by enlisting in the Marines, that he could be all he could be, and that he would be able to go to military school and come back and be a great highway patrolman and so forth. And I come to find out last night in speaking to my younger brother uh, that the job that they've got him set up for has nothing to do with law enforcement, which is what he wanted to continue. He has not even left for basic training, and the lies are already there.
Matter of fact, when my younger son was looking at going enlisting, and because he wanted to go to college, I actually called you guys, and you guided me to some sites, and one of them had, I think, 13 or 15 different lies the recruiter will tell you. And I went with him through each and every one, and he could tell me exactly how the recruiter lied with each and every one of them. And then thank God he made the right decision that he wasn't going to do it. And instead, he is now a professional world-class jiu-jitsu champion, which I highly encourage. Other than the military, go for it,
His present career still goes in tune with what he wanted to do in the military. Discipline, tremendous discipline. What a better place than as a jiu-jitsu instructor.
Oh, absolutely. And he is now,
Yes.
Both boys have come a long way. I'm very proud. They fight, and it's not hurting anybody. It's done with honor.
Exactly.
And it's not the military. You're not feeding that war machine. And, I didn't raise and have babies for them to become cannon fodder.
Exactly. Absolutely.
But let's get back to veterans being deported.
Absolutely. We've crossed that hurdle that, they were promised the citizenship. Let's face it, when you're in the military, part of the culture is a culture of drinking, fighting. That's what you're trained for. You're trained to fight. You're trained to kill. And on many occasions, you end up in a battlefield, and you have to kill to survive. Not only do you have to kill to survive, you have to see your buddies, the person that perhaps helped you through part of that boot camp, get you through boot camp, all of a sudden laying next to you, lifeless, with his body dismembered. When you enter the military, you enter usually as a young kid, 17, 18 years old, very naive, very patriotic, ready to serve because that is what you feel. That's what's in your heart. When you go through the different phases, as we were talking about, and you exit the military, how do you return back to society, to your community, as that naive 17, 18-year-old kid that left, when you have been exposed to a completely different culture? A culture that no matter what you were going through during your training, you were taught and instructed to suck it up, to take it, to not request medical attention. That's how you're trained. So when you come back from the military, especially you come back from battle, you're not going to ask for help. They say that there's help available. Sure, there's help available through the VA, which is a tedious process if you request it. But let's face it, most of our military veterans, when they come back, they don't request it. When they finally start requesting medical treatment, is because things have gotten complicated in their life. Either, their service-connected injuries have gone to the point that they require immediate medical attention, or they have had to succumb to dealing with the consequences of their service to addictions, self-medicating, alcohol, drug addiction, and of course, in many occasions, violence, especially against your most close loved ones. Lately, a study was developed that military service personnel are more apt to committing domestic violence than anybody else, intimate domestic violence than anybody else. Now, why? Because when they come back from the service, who is the first point of contact? Who's the first person that has to deal with them? The spouse, children, mother, father, brothers, sisters. And that's where the intimate domestic violence comes into effect.
Is it correct to be, if I'm wrong, doesn't Canada, when they bring home their men and women from fighting, send them away to de-stress before they allow them to go back to their families?
I don't know. I have heard that myself, but I haven't done any research on it. But we feel that they should, whether they ask for it or not, they should be put through a program to decompress them from what they're going through so that they can integrate back into their community, so they can be given back to their families and be able to lead a quality life, not to struggle, with mental health issues that end up leading to what the cause has been for our deported veterans, getting in trouble with the law. Again, when this 1996 law was signed by Bill Clinton, it opened up a broader scope of crimes that were deportable. Prior to that, only the most heinous crimes would be warranted for removal, like, for example, terrorist threats against the country or taking up arms against the country. Other than that, it was, mass murder, just very heinous crimes would get you deported. But after 1996, any crime, even just a drunk driving or a petty theft with a prior, where you really weren't even sentenced to a whole lot of time, are all of a sudden deportable crimes. Anything that you're sentenced to more than 1996, any crime that you were sentenced to more than 1 year in county jail is what is called, considered for immigration purposes, an aggravated felony and grounds for removal, for deportation.
But they're letting you serve in the military, correct?
Absolutely. They allow you to serve in the military. And, let's face it, like I was talking about, some of the culture that is experienced is, what do military personnel do on the weekend? They go get drunk. It's a culture that already exists even before they get out of the military. We have a deported veteran with us that he was a Marine Corps veteran coming back from maneuvers out in Puerto Rico. His whole unit that were on a truck coming back were completely drunk. Even the driver of the truck. He was in the back of the truck. He fell off the truck, went into a coma for about 4 months. Had injuries to his waist, to his back. I mean, he was completely a mess. Part of his treatment was painkillers, which got him addicted to painkillers. Shortly after that, his father passed away. He was not able to be there for the funeral. He was still dealing with how to get by this pain that was caused by this accident. Well, 30, 40 some years later, he has still not been able to survive it. He ended up getting a discharge from the Marine Corps, and not an honorable discharge, because he he fell apart. He succumbed to addiction. After he was discharged from the military, he just couldn't get his life back together. He had to continue to self-medicate, and even up to now, he has trouble walking. He's got back trouble, and this all stemmed from drinking while on duty. And this was with his commanding officer with them in the truck, along with everybody else. So it's something that is part of the culture. It's part of what they do on the weekends. In this case, it wasn't even the weekend. They were still on duty.
Wow. Well, what I find interesting, though, is that they will allow people to serve in the military, put their life on the line, and know they're going to get rid of them before, as they go in, because they know exactly what they've done.
Sure. Absolutely. They know that when you come out, if you have not become a U.S. citizen, you're going to get into trouble and they're going to get rid of you.
Now, can you become a U.S. citizen while you're in the military?
Absolutely. A few months ago, maybe a couple of years ago, they had kind of sped up the process to assist those that were enlisting in the military. So by the time you ended up finishing your basic training, you could have gone through the process to become a citizen. However, we have actually veterans, deported veterans, that applied for their citizenship when they were active duty, but since they were moved around from base to base, their paperwork never followed them along. So along the line, those citizenship interviews never were fulfilled. They thought, well, I applied for my citizenship. I filled out my application. I never heard back from them. I must be a citizen. And of course, when they come back home, they get in trouble. After serving their time, they're placed in immigration custody and find out that citizenship application was never finalized. And all of a sudden, they find themselves getting ready to be deported, removed to a country where they were born in, but they left at a very young age. They don't even remember the country. Some of them don't even remember the language.
So they're put in jail like any other immigrant. Are they a special immigration jail because they were in the military, or are they just thrown into the mass general population?
That's a very good question. First of all, when you commit your mistake, your crime, whatever you want to call it, you go to a regular jail, whether it's a county jail, a state prison, even a federal jail, depending if it's a federal crime that you committed. Once you are released from your obligations, once you fulfill the time that you were punished for, or you pay your debt to society, then you are turned over to immigration detention, where if you're going to fight your case, you can be detained anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, depending on the process that you continue with fighting your case. And when you go to immigration detention, on many occasions, that immigration detention is shared with the marshals detention, which are people that are being prosecuted for federal crimes, whether it would be organized crime, drug trafficking, everything you can imagine. So all of a sudden, you've got this veteran that already did his time, and now is being placed in immigration detention in an area, in a center where he might even be exposed to, people that are part of, the organized crime area, and the worst criminals that you can imagine. You've already paid for your mistake. You've already paid for your crime. To us, we consider this as double jeopardy, something that the Constitution of the United States does not allow. However, Department of Homeland Security and ICE make up their own rules, and they have decided that immigration detention is not actually a punishment, that it's a civil case, and therefore is not double jeopardy. You're not paying twice for the same crime. And actually, you're, as a deported veteran, you're not paying twice, you're paying three times. You do your time, you pay your fines, that's one. Number two, you have your legal permanent residence taken from you. You are removed from the country that you swore to protect. But now you're giving a life sentence away from your family, away from your home, away from yourself, of who you are, who you grew up to be. You're given a life sentence. You're given a sentence that not even the worst mass murderer or child rapist is given.
Oh God, what was the question? I'm sorry. This really, really makes me sad and wants to cry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I lost it. To write it down. It'll come back.
Not a problem. So that's a grave injustice. You're not punishing them once, twice, okay, three times.
What about the Marine? I think you had a picture when I just first contacted you of a man that was in the military. I think he was a Marine, and he still got sent back. Now, can you still get deported just because you're an immigrant and not have actually done anything wrong other than being an immigrant?
Absolutely. We see that here in the border every day. A lot of migrants that have been fleeing violence in their own country, and even people that have flown from violence from their state, from their hometown, that come up to the border area, that cross into the U.S., never commit any crime. Their only crime was to try to save their life or save the life of their loved ones. They were picked up in the U.S. For whatever reason, non-criminal, and yes, of course, they get deported. They get sent right back.
What about the people that are in the military, though? Can they still get deported even if they have not done anything wrong?
Well, if you have not done anything wrong, you can't deport. You can't get deported because you're not going to be put into immigration uh, detention. So no, you.
Okay. Okay. So, what is it like when a veteran is deported?
Well, uh, well, number one, when you're deported, you're being deported to a country that you were born in. But it's a country you don't know anymore. It's a country that you were taken away from when you were a very young child, so you don't even remember it. You hardly even speak the language, so you're going into no man's land. Uh, Terrible depression, anxiety, trauma, uh, and then on top of that, you add the uh, the effects of the military service. If you're coming out of the military where you served in combat, you have uh, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, um, all kinds of different illnesses, injuries that affect you. So on top of that, you add to it, uh, the depression, the anxiety of being torn away from the country you live in, from your home, from your family. Um, you're like a fish out of water. You know, what do you do? Who do you turn to? Um, when you get deported with practically just the shirt off your back. You know, um, when you arrive here, uh, in order for you to even get medical attention, get a job, do anything, you have to secure your voter identification card. But if you're being deported and you just with the shirt off your back, what are you going to do? How are you going to survive? If you can't work, you have to get these documents, but you got to figure out a way to be able to acquire these documents so that you can start trying to survive. It's a very difficult situation.
Yeah, when you go back to the country, and I do know quite a few Hispanics that have told me that if they did get sent back to Mexico, it's a death sentence.
Uh, that's what you feel like it's a death sentence. Uh, you have to have something to hold on to, uh, to not get into that despair of wanting to take your life because your life has been taken. You have to remember when you get deported, they're taking your life away from you. So what is there else to live for? You're in a country you don't know. You don't have any friends. You don't have nobody. They've taken everything from you. What is going to give you any kind of motivation to live?
Well, he's also saying that once in Mexico, that the people there look at the people that are being deported, especially people who've lived in the United States for a long time, like traitors. And that's how they feel that their life is in danger because you're now looked, you're not really Hispanic, Mexican, you are American.
Uh, that is one of the thoughts, that and you do get up to a certain degree discriminated against because you might speak Spanish, but you don't speak it the same way everybody else does. Your customs are a little bit different, so you are looked upon a little bit different, uh, and that makes it that much harder for you to integrate. But you know, uh, I've been deported for 6 years. 63 years old. I went to the U.S. at the age of 6. All my life is in the U.S. My kids, my grandkids, my life, um, my mom and dad's burial plot, uh, everything, everything is back there. Um, but uh, I was born here in Mexico, and this is my country, and even though I never thought that I would come to Tijuana to live here. I dreaded it. I wanted to come and eat tacos and nothing else, never to live. So when I got here, it was quite a shock. However, it's taught me a lot about myself. And I no longer feel like that. I feel like this is my country because I was born here and I belong here. But I also feel that the United States is my country because that's where I was raised. That is my home. I was born here, but the U.S. is my home. And you know what? I don't care who anybody is, whether Mr. Trump or Mexican president or anybody in the world is going to tell me that I don't belong in both places. So and this is my own personal feeling. Take ownership of who you are. Don't let anybody try to tell you otherwise. If you're, fortunate enough to have both cultures, embrace both of them, accept both of them, and fight for both of them because that's who you are. When you get deported, they're trying to strip you of who you are. When you get here, they're trying to strip you of who you are. Don't allow it. But the only way that you can motivate yourself for that is you have to have something to motivate. You have to hold on to something. And for me, God has been my rock. He's who I held on to for life. And but that's just my own personal belief. But I feel that everybody needs to embrace who they are and not let themselves be discriminated against, and stick up for yourself. Even if you're down here in Mexico and you don't speak the language as fluid as somebody that's lived here all their life, so what? You were born here. And, you're lucky enough, God willing, that you go back home to the U.S., then don't let anybody over there tell you don't belong there because you weren't born there.
Well, I wasn't born in Mexico, but I did have my teeth fixed down there. So I like to think I carry a little bit of Mexico everywhere.
There you go. Exactly. Absolutely. Very good dentist out here.
Oh, absolutely. And affordable. Las Algodones. Oh my God, they changed my life. What I'm curious though, are there any groups now in Mexico that are coming together, especially veterans, that are helping veterans that are getting kicked out of the United States adjust?
Yes, there are. There's been a couple of them that have sprung up. Our organization, Unified US Deported Veterans, actually begun back around 2008, 2009, is when this deported veteran issue kind of started coming out of the shadows. And that's where we kind of begun. But the startup on it was kind of rough. And even though the group was formed back then, it took different changes and different names. And there was a split in the group. One of the veterans moved from Rosarito, Mexico to Tijuana, opened up another group, while the other group stayed in Rosarito. When this occurred, I ended up running into that veteran here in Tijuana, and that's where my story begins with deported veterans about 5.5 years ago. I left that organization about 2.5 years ago, and when I left them, I got invited to this new organization, Unified US Deported Veterans, through my friends at Veterans for Peace. They had informed me they were opening up an office. They knew I was no longer participating in the other veterans group if I wanted to come on board. And I said, sure. My friends from Veterans for Peace, Jan Ruman, George Johnson, great people, great caring veterans that you can't see enough about what they're willing to give for our deported veterans and all veterans. So I said, sure. And that's where we've been. We're located about 40 yards from the border crossing. And obvious reasons why we're there, because we want to be the first point of contact to intercept veterans that are being deported so that we can give them an opportunity, just like we have received an opportunity to integrate into the community as productive members. in our community, in our neighborhood. That is part of our mission. The other part of the mission is to continue to search for legal avenues to be able to help our deported veterans to be repatriated back to the United States. There are a couple, three different organizations. There's another one in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, and a couple of them here in Tijuana. And like I said, we're right at the border because that's where we can be accessible to veterans that are being deported.
How can people help?
There's a couple of different ways we can help. Of course, our doors stay open because of the generosity of our friends, Veterans for Peace. If it wasn't for them, we would not be open. Donating into our organization through our website or through Veterans for Peace, Deported Veterans Advocacy Project. Veterans for Peace is our fiscal sponsor, so it's all, of course, tax deductible. But it's not enough to just help us keep our doors open. We need to spread the word. We need to let people know the grave injustice that is being done to our veterans. And we need to stop that injustice. On October 29th, the U.S. Congress Judiciary Committee is going to be holding hearings on several issues. And one of the issues that we're very happy about is the issue of deported veterans. Congressman Vicente Gonzalez out of Texas introduced a bill, H.R. 1078, which is finally going to start to receive the attention that it requires. And that attention is going to be in those hearings that are going to be held on October 29th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We need to contact our elected officials, especially those that are on the Judiciary and Immigration committees, to support this bill. The bill itself perhaps, falls maybe a little bit short of what we would like it to see, but it's a start. And if this bill is going to help us bring some deported veterans home, then we need to, by all means, stand behind it and get it passed through the House and into the Senate. But the only way we can do that is by contacting our elected officials to make sure that they support this bill. Without them supporting it, we're going to be back down to ground zero. There's some other activity that we're starting to look at, and that activity is 8 USC USC code, U.S. law. It's 8 USC 1101 A22, and what this code deals with is what constitutes the nationality of a person. In other words, what does it take for a person to declare his allegiance to the country to be considered a national? That's what this code deals with. It was regarding a case that was fought in district court, federal district court, Lee versus Ashcroft, and the argument there was that Mr. Lee, when he actually signed up for the draft, that constituted his full allegiance to the United States, and therefore, as receiving full allegiance to the United States, granted him to be a national of the United States, and therefore was not deportable. In federal court, he won it. However, the government appealed it in the Second District Court of Appeals, and it was denied. They remanded it back to the district court. But the way that the case was lost was very weak. There wasn't a really good foundation why it was being denied at the appellate court. So the president is there, and if a district federal court considered that somebody that signed up for the draft showed enough allegiance to be considered a national, then how much more can somebody that actually served in the military, that went to battle for the United States, how much more allegiance can you ask of a person under those kind of situations, under those conditions? And that is what we want to fight for. That is what we are looking for, to gain enough momentum and to get congressional support so that they can introduce this proposed amendment to 8 U.S.C. Code 1101A22. This way, those that have been deported, that took that oath of allegiance, can be repatriated, and it can stop any of our veterans that are in deportation proceedings from being removed from the United States.
Wow, that's powerful, and it makes so much sense. It's almost too logical for the government to handle.
Exactly, that is correct. It's not about reinventing the wheel. The law's there. It's about modifying a little bit, and not really modifying it, but clearing it up. For the sake of clarification, make it clear what that intention of that law was. And what the intention of that law is very simple, that if you're willing to give your life for the United States, then you should be allowed to remain in the United States.
And be a citizen, for goodness sake.
Exactly.
Now, are you allowed to go back into the United States, or are you in Mexico now?
I am not at this point. I'm still fighting my case. I've got an appeal with the state of California for the conviction that got me deported. And, again, it's in God's hands. What God decides, where he wants me to go, that's what we're going to accept. If he wants me to continue here in Mexico, then we're going to continue here fighting. If he wants me to do something for him in the U.S., we're going to go there. But I think one thing for sure is that we're not going to stop fighting until this injustice of deporting veterans is terminated once and for all.
Now, how many veterans that you are able to help in Mexico actually speak Spanish? Do you have to teach them?
The majority, of course, speak Spanish by now, but we do have a handful that were just recently deported within the last 3 years. That, of course, now they speak a little bit better, a little more, but they still don't write it as well. Even some of the ones that have been here 5-10 years still don't write it as well. Still don't understand it as well. 30-40 years in the U.S., it's going to be hard to pick up Spanish fully and write it and understand it fully.
Now, do people come in and give you donations for these men and women? Because it sounds like they're coming in with absolutely nothing.
We do not, not really often, but we do once in a while. We have T-shirts that we print out, like the one that I'm wearing. And what we do is we have them there in the office for a donation of $20. We give them a T-shirt. We don't sell them, it's as a donation, and that helps with some of the expenses also. And of course, we do have groups come in, university school groups, religious groups that come in. And they, once in a while they will help out with a small donation, or they'll donate for a T-shirt.
Mm-hmm. Is that on your Facebook page, the T-shirt?
No, they're not. We have to update it and put them on there. But if anybody wants a T-shirt, they can send us a message on Facebook or through our website. We have a website that really easy to contact us with. You put in your information, and it generates an email directly to me. So if you need to contact us for any reason, get a T-shirt, you can make that contact, and we'll have it shipped out to you.
What's the website at?
I'm sorry?
What's the website address?
The website address is www. U.S. in uniform, S as in Sierra, D as in Delta, E as in Echo, D as in Papa, V as in Victor, E as in Echo, T as in Tango, S as in Sierra.org. It's the abbreviation for Unified US Deported Veterans.
Yep, I got that. Okay. I do want to get a T-shirt.
Okay. Well, we'll get that out to you. Just got to get your address. You can email it to me. And when Mr. Jan Ruman or George Johnson or any of our friends from San Diego come across, we'll put it in an envelope for you and get it shipped out to you.
Cool. All right. I'll give you that information through Facebook. Is that all right?
Sure. Through Messenger, you can do that, or yeah, that's fine.
I'm still just kind of trying to wrap my mind around how these men and women come over. And is there more men being deported than women?
As far as we know, there's only been one female that has been deported. There may be more, but there's only one that has been confirmed.
How does that affect the men and women that are in the military? I mean, where does that put them? Aren't they uneasy on what their future is going to be? I mean, knowing that at any time they can be ripped out of the country?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially here in the last few months that Mr. Trump has been so adamant about kicking out of the military non-citizens and recipients of DACA. That makes it especially very frightening to them and very unjust. Here you are, a person that haven't committed any kind of a crime. You're willing to sacrifice your life for the country, and yet you're being, looked at as something, of a plague or something. It's just mind-boggling. How can you have that kind of mentality? You talk to some of the non-immigrant veterans, citizen veterans, and majority are going to tell you that they're not very happy with that ideal either. When you're in battle, bullets aren't going to ask you if you have a green card or you're a citizen.
True, absolutely true. It's just mind-boggling because when the vets do get, and actually any immigrant that gets kicked out of the country, they're not allowed, really. The families don't go with them. It's basically starting a whole new life with everything new because you basically, like you said, have lost everything and everything was taken from you.
Absolutely. Right now, earlier today, I just got off the phone with a gentleman named Jose Segovia. Jose was deported to El Salvador a couple of days ago. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, served in Iraq, came back as damaged goods, rated by the VA with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury. He had a very difficult time integrating back into his community. He had trouble with his girlfriend, ended up getting into trouble with the law for domestic violence, aggravated domestic violence. He was never afforded the treatment that he deserved, that he was entitled to. He was diagnosed finally with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder, but by then he was already in the system, you know. And of course, even at that point, when he went to court on one of the charges, it went to trial. And you talk about an injustice. His defense attorney was not permitted to enter into evidence his military service, his combat service, nor his rating from the VA with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. So, of course, what did the jury see? They saw a monster. They didn't see everything behind the picture of what this kid had gone through. So, of course, they came back with a guilty plea. He'd done his time. After doing his time, he fought his case for about 2 years at Adelanto ICE Processing Center, who is a notorious immigration jail for human rights violations. While there, he was denied the adequate medical treatment for his injuries. He developed other illnesses while in custody, developed a heart problem while in custody. And to add to it, when he was going to be deported, an attorney firm that was hired through LULAC and Green Card Veterans out of Chicago were given a reprieve. They were given an additional few days to present new documentation on his behalf, while a pardon petition was being put or was in the governor's office to stop him from being deported. Well, they were told they were going to have a few days to present this documentation, and then all of a sudden, overnight, he was deported without any knowledge to his attorneys, to anybody. Just snuck out of the country. Jose left El Salvador when he was 2 years old, never been back. He's sitting there in El Salvador right now. We want to get him back. We want to get him here to Tijuana. But, what we're doing, and we have been doing here for a while, is, and it's been all over the media, we are calling and we are urging Governor Newsom to sign his pardon. We can't stop him from getting deported because he's already been deported, but we can pressure Governor Newsom to sign that pardon so that his immigration case can be reopened and we can get him back home to where he belongs in Long Beach, California. So we're not going to stop until Governor Newsom, grants that pardon or makes a decision.
Now, just out of curiosity, are there groups now in El Salvador and the other countries like your group that are there waiting for the vets and helping them?
Absolutely not. None whatsoever.
It's so cruel. I'm sorry. It's absolutely cruel and evil what our government's doing. And I look at them how Nazi of them.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. The hour is gone by so quick, and you're right. You could talk through the whole hour.
Oh, yes.
But I'd like to talk to you in the next couple of days, if you have time, about some of the things that I do that I might be able to help the vets if you're interested. And it's energy work.
Absolutely. Very
thank you again for coming on. It's been an eye-opener and my heart hurts. That's all I can say. It aches. I mean, I want to cry.
Yeah. It's a great injustice that is being done to the veteran. but also to the family. You know, these are United States citizens that are being affected, kids, moms, dads, not only the veteran, this is a chain effect. Uh, one veteran uh, that is deported has a chain of, 10, 15, 20, 30 U.S. citizens that are being affected. What about their rights?
And with that, I have nothing to say. I agree with you. That's it for tonight, everybody. We'll see you next week. This is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap, Let Light Unite on UPRN Radio. And good night, everybody.
Good night, Kathy.
Robert. I'll
Thank
talk
you
to
for
you
having us
soon.
on. Bye-bye.